Hey everybody, and welcome back to Beyond Trek Podcast. In the house today, I've got Renzo and Big J, and we're here to talk to you about Prodigy Episode 5 Cliffhanger, because we're not getting any of the other episodes for quite a while. Terror Firma. So is the
like the play on words.
Yeah, no, it was really great. Those of you who may not have gotten that, Terra Firma is just hard land. Terror Firma is, I guess, hard horror. There you go.
And just to warn you ahead of time, I may be a little bit on the slap happy side because we were up late till I think it was about at least 2 o'clock for myself and Renzo in our time zones doing our episode, season 4, episode 1 Discovery. And then I had the kids all day today. And, they were sick, so we couldn't go anywhere. So right now I am Beyond Tired podcast.
We're okay.
We can be beyond tired and also be on Trek at the same time. Sometimes
Yeah.
they mesh very well, and we get pretty funny those days.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Beyond Blank episodes. It's almost like a bingo card now. Like, what podcast did we end up doing today? Beyond something else.
Beyond Lord of the Rings. We did Beyond the Matrix.
We were
podcast.
almost beyond O.J. Simpson the other day.
True.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, we really were.
That's
But
why
You
you have
get
to
the
watch
clip
or
of
listen.
that. You get the clip of that when you hear our review of Coda Book, or our discussion on Coda Book 3.
Out
Yep.
on Tuesday, November 30th, the same day as the book. Check that out, our interview with David Mack, concluding the other interviews that we have done with Dayton Ward and James Swallow about that trilogy.
I can't wait for it.
And I'm going to go ahead and jump in with your spoiler alert, because if you haven't seen this episode yet, please do, or don't. Take your own risks. We're not here to tell you what to do. I love this episode. I thought this was a really cool fulfillment of several arcs, at least for me, or maybe not fulfillment, but kicking off of the actual character arc for some people. But yeah, this was basically the second half of them. They're stranded on planet Kudzu. That's what I call it. And
Did we actually get a name?
No.
It's
Yeah,
a
I
planet
think
in the
so.
Horizon system. I'm thinking of it as
Right.
like botanical Unicron because it likes to eat people. So, hence the shirt I'm wearing, which is Unicron.
Awesome, yes.
Oh man. Here's the Beyond Transformers podcast. The Unicron was the last role that Orson Welles ever did.
That's right. Yeah.
People be like, "Who's Orson Welles?" Like, I don't have time in this podcast to explain it. Please use Google.
Nimoy's in that movie too. It was great.
Yeah, he is.
Leonard Nimoy played Galvatron. Perfect voice for that character.
And he was again in Transformers 3. And he said
That's
the
right.
line, and I was so upset.
Yeah.
Optimus. Anyway.
All right, so I agree with you. I thought this episode was a ton of fun. I like the way that we finished off the introductions of characters. We've started their arcs. We've gotten their arcs moving, but we finished off like their intro bits now.
Yeah.
We know Gwen's motivations now. We know what Rock Talk really cares about. We understand the crew and the cast a lot better now.
The only cast member that's still kind of a wild card for me is Jankum Pog, which I think we're probably going to get his backstory a little bit later, because he's the only one who kind of remembers where he came from. So we'll get that.
Here, I agree with you wholeheartedly there, and I'm curious: is that going to be an actual storyline that we get a little more? Is why do these characters not remember where they came from, or is that just quick
I
dialogue?
think they've already told us, really, right? Like Rock Talk was too young. She
Yep.
is too young still. She just doesn't remember it. Murph
Right.
doesn't speak so far.
Right.
Zero simply hasn't revealed, has been incredibly evasive about their origins, so we don't know what Zero knows at all.
Right.
It's made it clear that Dal knows of his parents but doesn't remember them. Again, probably just a youth thing. He doesn't even know the name of the species. And Gwen knows who her father is, but that's not a fun subject for her at this point.
And we know that the two of them are the last of whatever species they're from.
The Val Nakat.
The Vau Nakat. I did not get that. That's great. That's great to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we've gotten that. We still don't know how Janeway and the Protostar ended up in this area of space either.
That's
but
true.
I'm sure that's what we'll explore.
Well, and I think that's where Robert Beltran's going to come in. Is there's going to be some kind of logs on the Protostar that show that Captain Captain Chakotay launched the Protostar from a starbase as a drone ship to do recon in the area, and just gloss over the fact that we sent an entire starship and not just a regular drone. But that's cool.
And then he lost the ship. That would just be great.
Well, great. Good job, Commander. You just lost your third ship in the Delta Quadrant.
How many commanders can say that, though, right? Like, how many can brag about that on their resume?
That's exactly how Chakotay would frame it, too. Like, no other captain can do that.
Stop giving this man ships.
Yep.
So this episode starts off with the crew, the kids, still on the Terror planet, kind of like settling back in, realizing that they have lost the ship. It's spiraled out of control. They're deciding whether they even want to help Gwen along because she seems to have broken her leg in her aborted shuttle escape that she tried to do with Murphs. Murphs, however, is nice and fine and snuggles up with Rock Talk, which was nice and touching too. But Dal is quite pissed at Gwen and is essentially saying that they should just leave her behind. Don't let her slow us down. We've got to find the ship.
It's so cruel. But
yeah,
those are words that are more spoken in anger and frustration than in forethought.
Yeah, for sure. But it's a very childish thing, right? Like, it fits the character. It's the kind of thing. It's like, you took my ball. I don't ever want to see you again. Well, and that's not realistic.
It contrasts well with something that happens later in the episode to Gwen. So I thought that was really nice.
Absolutely. So they get a hail from the ship's Janeway onto their little buggy. The Outrunner, something like that. The runaway.
I just remember the hold on to your butts handles that it had, which is kind of a variation of the one that Picard drove and Nemesis. The Argo, yeah.
Yeah. So Janeway's what?
Janeway's telling them that, hey, the ship landed. It's fine. Come to the ship. We're 10 kilometers away. Get your butts over here. We've got to go.
Being eaten by kudzu.
Right. It's literally being wrapped in the vines all over.
Yep.
And then we cut to her scene, which I thought was great, where she's like trying to talk the computer into doing certain things, and she doesn't have the access, even though she's part of the ship's computer.
Right.
She's not a real person. She doesn't have command codes. So she sits in the chair and goes, "What would Captain Janeway do?"
Such a great moment.
She's a training hologram, but not a command hologram. Is that right?
Seems to be. I loved that scene. I was almost expecting her to again lift her arm with a cup of coffee again while thinking about it. But she does come up with a pretty nifty idea, even though they're low on power. She engages the photonic scrubbers.
Yep.
Yes.
Little ship.
Yeah, photonic ship scrubbers.
Yeah. Well, I just finished it before we did this because I had to wait till the kids left, and I started watching the episode, and for some reason I thought, this does not look familiar. I could have swore I watched episode 4. So I had to watch the last half of that because apparently it didn't absorb. So yes, definitely that's fresh. Photonic scrubbers. So wouldn't this hologram, even be a training hologram, still have ECH protocols? Wouldn't it still be able to have the emergency hologram?
You'd have to program
emergency command hologram?
You'd have to assume that the basic programming for hologram Janeway was a command hologram, which she's very much not.
Yeah, we've made assumptions about the access on the hologram that are being shown to not be true, right? This is truly just a babysitter training hologram, it looks like, because the computer refused to give her access to command subroutines, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right, yeah. Unfortunate.
Now, we did get some lovely shots of Elkar's displays while she's trying to figure out what's hitting the nacelles, what's doing what, all that, which was very nice. I love seeing the Elkars that we see in Prodigy. It is fantastically authentic feeling. I'm surprised they don't have the Akutas doing it. They might be. Do you know if the Akutas are involved?
I don't know if the Akutas are involved.
I don't recall seeing their names in the credits.
They weren't involved. However, I like that they carry the color scheme over from Nemesis, which had the blues instead of the sort of pastel colors of the Enterprise D.
Yeah, it's an upgrade. Elkar's 11 or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Blue buttons of death.
But yeah, so she deploys the photonic ship scrubbers. They are little drones. Makes sense. They zap bits of the kudzu away, buying her some time, and then they, keep doing this cleaning subroutine that they've got for a bit, buying her more time. And
did you notice
in the meantime,
that the scrubbers looked like exocomps?
Yeah, a lot.
That was cool.
I don't think they are exocomps because exocomps being sentient, probably not getting that kind of treatment.
I
But
think-
they do look like them.
I want to think that the exocomps were built on a photonic scrubber mainframe.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, the photonic
Right.
scrubber existed, and somebody just replaced all the internal stuff with a
Yeah.
whining dog.
Sorry, Tuvix knows that we're talking
He's
about
so
his show.
adorable. He's so adorable.
We love that dog. So, does anyone else besides me kind of have a problem with these tree branches being able to hold down a starship? I'm having a hard time seeing that an organic thing, even if it's arms, branches, whatever you want to call it, would have enough power to keep a starship at bay. Starships wouldn't they have more power than that? I just had a hard time with that.
It's probably fine. The problem is that Janeway doesn't have access to the systems that would allow her to do more.
Yeah, like if they turn on the impulse engines, they would probably snap through, but she doesn't have access to that.
Right.
She doesn't have access to warp, clearly.
Basically just thrusters. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And that may not be enough. And remember, most of the reason why you can break something is momentum. If they're holding it still, it can't make momentum, so it's
Right.
kind of tough to break through stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a kid's show, so I give it some leeway on the realism on things like that. But
Sure.
yeah, or a family show, I think is the term I preferred before. But
Yep,
yeah,
family show.
it's you give it some leeway on fictional elements. Who knows? Maybe the like dendritic tendons of the branches are made out of something as dense as diamond. Who knows, right?
True. We are on an alien planet.
They could have like super mitochondria powering those cell walls.
Gotcha.
Plant
All right.
cells don't have mitochondria, but yeah,
These ones could.
they could.
Right,
They could.
see?
That's
Tele-
fair.
They're
All right.
telepathic. They can read organic minds. Or maybe they
All right,
just
so we
function
cut-
by pheromone.
So we cut back to the kids, and the runaway has gotten pulled away by the vine, so they can't take that, and they're just kind of marching in the direction that their tricorders are telling them that the ship is, and they don't seem to be making very much progress.
Did we
There's
talk
a couple
about
scenes.
Did we talk about Gwen using her funky
Oh,
new device as a cast?
Not yet. That's in this scene, so definitely
okay.
good call. Yeah, so because she can't walk because of her broken leg, Rock Talk offers to help her, but she is stubborn and refuses, and instead has her snaky programmable matter like arm and sword thing like wrap around and brace her leg, which is still quite painful from the look on her face.
Said she had a
Well, yeah.
compound fracture. That's painful.
You have had one?
No.
Oh,
Zero said that Gwen had a compound fracture in her leg.
right. Yeah. No, I thought you said you've had one before. Okay.
Just in my arms.
Right. Well, for something as handy and utilitarian as that programmable matter, whatever you want to call it, as an emergency cast, sure. I mean, it's not supposed to be a do-all, but it did give her some mobility considering the injury she had.
I mean, her control over it definitely seems to be somehow telepathic, right? Like her
Yes.
head and tentacles and such glow bluish when she's thinking to it. So whatever it is, it's crazy advanced, and it's something from the Vaunacat, because she said that she got it from her father.
Yep.
So we don't know enough about it to really say, but the thing is neat.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so yeah, she definitely seems to cry almost when she's standing up for the first time. Like there are lines under her eyes that glowed for the first time, which I don't think we'd seen. But she hobbles along and tries to stay with the pack, and then we cut to a scene at night, which on a terror planet is definitely terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
The
Hell
only
yeah, it is.
illumination that they seem to have is the light coming out of Zero, which is amazing. And again, they find that they're still somehow, after walking 10 kilometers away.
Yeah.
How long on average would it take to walk 10 kilometers? I have a hard time with
Couple hours.
kilometers. With
10 kilometers is 6 miles.
6 miles. Okay.
So hour and a half, hour 45, maybe
Sounds
2
about
hours
right.
if you're on unfamiliar terrain like this, for sure.
Yeah, I would
How
have
do
said
they
about 2
manage-
hours for it.
I mean, it's enough for like me to be like, all right, I need to take a break. 6 miles is quite a bit to do in that kind of area.
Yeah, it's not like you're walking on a straight sidewalk, but
Especially
How?
when you're in foreign territory, you're surrounded by people who are scared and afraid. It's dark, you have no
Yep.
idea what's going on, and you know there's Ivy that's trying to kill you.
and your
I'd-
kids on top of that, it's not like
I'd be very stressed. That's the
And they're
Yes.
hearing sounds and such, right? Like rustling in the trees. There's something moving around them. Like they're getting all the creepy vibes.
There's
It's a perfect-
shaking
it's a very
going
Halloween
on.
episode.
The hills are kind of disappearing on them.
The hills have eyes. Yeah.
There's a great scene in this, or a great bit in this scene where Zero tries to reach out telepathically to the planet to see if maybe they can talk to it. Does it have a name? Nope, it's just hungry. Just wants to eat us.
Just wants to eat.
That's it.
Yes.
Nope, just kill planet.
Yeah, so they keep wandering, and we snap back to Janeway, back on the bridge of the Protostar, still continuing to worry about power consumption, looking around and seeing what's using up power. And I think this is when she first mentions that there is a Protostar core
Yes.
that
There's
is sucking up a lot of power.
a Protostar core sucking in power. She can't shut it down, does not have command access to do that, and it is drawing a lot of power. So instead, she has to cut life support, which I would have thought that would be the first obvious thing. She's the only one on there in the hologram.
Depends, though. Maybe the Hollow Matrix is integrated with the life support, but what she cuts first is actually the replicators, which she definitely doesn't need.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember that on Prometheus, which also had the walk-around holograms, life support and the Hollow Matrix were tied. I remember that gag. Remember they started flickering when they were rerouting power from things?
Right.
I did not catch that life support and who would do that? Why was that? Okay, never mind.
Starfleet engineers, best in the business.
I wonder if they're union.
It's gay space communism in the future, so probably. Anyways, so we cut back outside. The ship scrubbers are still trying to clear the ship, but she's worried. She's worried where the kids are, right? Like, they better hurry getting here. And she's definitely pacing around the bridge, like she's constantly walking around it. So even if she's just a hologram, she's definitely displaying very Janeway-esque behavior.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at the Doctor. There were a lot of times I forgot he was a hologram, and so this hologram Janeway is kind of doing the same thing.
Yep. And in this next scene, we're back with the kids, and we see Jenkin-Pog reaching out to touch a pretty little flower, and it snaps at his finger. So clearly, everything about this planet is a murder planet, and he stresses that. He's like, "Well, you guys made fun of me for wearing my space suit. Now look at us. It's cold, and I'm the only one that's fine in the space suit. This planet's mean."
I wonder if in the past a chunk of this planet was like blown off, but kept a lot of its integrity and landed on Earth as Australia.
Could be. Could be.
Yes. Yeah, that's what happens. Everything in Australia is trying to kill you. It must have come from a big piece of this planet.
What's the name of that weird plant that has the stinging nettle that like hurts forever?
Did you say stinging metal?
Nettle.
No, oh my God.
It's a plant that
It's like Oingo Boingo. It's got a silly name like that.
Yeah, no, it's this plant that if you touch it, it stings you, and even if you get the little spines out of your hand and everything like that, the venom and the pain can last lifelong.
Holy shit.
And it's one of those things where it's like people have been driven to insanity.
Oh, I've heard about this.
Yeah, it drives people to suicide because they can't get it to stop. What actually causes it are tiny little fibers that just sit inside of your hand and continue to like poke essentially at nerves for the rest of your life because your body can't get rid of them.
Oh my
Like
God.
gimpy is what it's called.
We can't
That's in Australia.
metabolize them. So and when your skin grows around it, it has to deal with that. So yeah, lifelong pain. Don't
All right,
touch
so
the evil plant.
We settled in the same scene in the darkness. We actually hit my favorite line of the episode. It's when they're all freaked out and Dal grabs Zero and points him around like a flashlight. And his statement was, "I don't know how to feel about this. I'm just happy to be helpful, though."
Is Zero?
I love Zero.
Zero's NB though, right?
I mean, they're not he or she, but yeah.
Right.
Well, because we don't know a whole lot about the Medusans. I don't think that they.
Medusans
I didn't
do
catch
not
that
have
they
gender.
even-
It's explicit.
Yeah, they're
Right,
non-corporeal.
right.
But yeah, no, when he, as in Dal, grabs Zero and points him on like a flashlight, Dal is definitely happy to have a flashlight, and then Zero's just happy to be helpful. And it was just a very, like, I love Zero kind of moment. The
It's
voice
kind of
actor
a-
is killing it.
That's a very chaotic, neutral, just expression to have. Like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I'm being useful. This is nice.
as opposed to just standing there and looking from side to side. No, had to get picked up and used as a flashlight because why not?
Well, pointing him at what Dal wanted to see, which ends
Yeah.
up being the core of the ship from Zero's own visions that they had experienced, coming towards them in like a massive monstrous form with like legs and arms and more tentacles made out of vines. It was kind of horrific. Approaching them, they start shooting their phasers at it. The phasers, they do nothing, and they're all kind of freaking out. And then Gwen, they do nothing. And then Gwen finally thinks that, wait, it's a plant. Plants can burn. Decides to chuck a spear at the thing and light it on fire.
In Fuego.
While they're in a forest that also catches fire.
That was that was well thought out.
Was
They're not in California, so how bad could it have been?
Words out of my mouth that disparage you, that are not nice words, because I live in burning California.
Yeah, so I think Gwen definitely saves the day here. Was the only one to come up with a thought other than keep firing phasers that don't seem to be working. So they run to the cliff. Why is there always a cliff? And off the cliff they jump.
Why is there always a cliff? I love that. So answer me this, because when they were doing that, it reminds me of so many times, not in just Star Trek, but other stuff. The one I'm going to point your attention to is in Star Trek Nemesis, when Picard and Data are running from the Remans. They get into that shuttle bay, big ass shuttle bay doors down. The Remans are just shooting their little BB gun pellets at the door constantly, just keep going. So what is it that would make you perform an action? It's not working. It appears that it would never work, but you continue doing it. You guys know the scene I'm talking about from Nemesis?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like something like that. And then now this.
So
Big J, we stayed in Afghanistan for 11 years.
Okay.
It's as much a real world problem as it is one in fiction.
Dang it.
Right?
Dang it, you had to go and you had to provide a real thing. I was going to be like, Jay, there's a deleted scene from Nemesis where the Remans are shooting, and then one of them actually says, why are we still shooting? And then one of the writers comes around the hall and it's like, damn it, Remans, fire! You're getting paid for this! So they keep shooting.
But yeah, no, seriously, humans are really bad about knowing when something doesn't work.
Yeah, you're right.
The problem
You're
is,
right.
I would say that in certain situations like that, when power structures flow in a certain way, it's really hard to stop that flow. But yeah, shooting at a door for a while, that they should have rethought that. And one of those people should have been like, I don't know, erect a level 10 force field around the shuttle bay and remotely disable all of our ships.
It's against Data, though. If you don't think Data can bypass a lockout, we're all crazy.
No,
right? Data can get past it.
Don't need to bypass a lockout, but I could also do a what's the equivalent of the prefix code. Make sure that it has no defenses, because even data can't bypass a prefix code.
I don't know. He seems to do it in that one episode of TNG where he locks out the computer from everyone and then hacks his own password later on.
Oh my God,
76258
Yeah, that's the one.
That ridiculous one.
767328731. It's really good to wrap this. It's on YouTube.
But yeah, so point is, people in general are bad about knowing when to give up on something if it's the only idea they've got. And they were definitely little kids who were freaked out just shooting what they had.
Yeah.
Sure.
But Gwen saves the day, and over the cliff they go. They definitely get some hang time because there's some flying going on. But they land not all that much worse for wear, and they find something there, which is a really cool bit of the episode, because they find, Dag,
Acid rain.
the planet tries to digest them, even when they're not in the forest.
On top of everything else. Isn't acid rain supposed to be very,
Bad.
you shouldn't stand in it as long as they did?
No, I mean, for people, if you have it cover your arm, it's not going to kill you immediately. It's not going to do much to you.
It's going to
The
be
problem with
uncomfortable.
acid, it'll sting. It might burn a little bit after a little while, but if you swipe it off, it's not the end of the world. It's not like it's raining hydrochloric acid on you, but this might be hydrochloric acid because it's something's digestion.
Yeah.
We don't really know what kind of acid it is, but real world acid rain, it's not like an immediate kind of thing. It'll probably fuck up your clothes more than it will your skin.
But
Right.
it screws with forests hardcore by changing the nature of the dirt.
The soil.
Yeah.
It also messes with buildings because the stone that's used on the outside of buildings is usually reactive to it, so it ruins cities. But
Yes.
yeah, What they end up going to do, though, is running into a hulk of a destroyed Klingon Burrell bird of prey, which is very nice.
Why is that there? How is
because
that
the
there?
caretaker grabbed things from all over.
Oh my God,
Or
yeah.
or
Yoink,
or
yoink, yoink.
it's another Klingon sleeper ship like the Taong, which was sent out that they found in the Deep Delta with Voyager in season 2, I think.
So you say this is a Braille class, but this looks even older. This looks like the one that they're like a Marauder from Enterprise.
Maybe. It looks to me like it's got the Burrell like wing actuation bit there.
It
That's why I
does.
thought it was a Burrell.
But it's got the I don't know, the neck piece is kind of ambiguous in the scene.
It's broken.
But
Yeah.
it is. It could be a Braille. It could be a Marauder. Meh.
Yeah, it's whatever. It's a
and
Klingon
that's
bird
the
of
cool
prey.
part.
Right. It's a Klingon bird of prey. They go inside, and Jank and Pog immediately recognize that Klingon food lasts forever, and he starts opening up like little bags of gach, it seems, and that's what he's going to serve the crew.
Dead gach.
How can that be used as
What a shame.
an emergency ration? It's better when it's alive.
Better.
Have you ever had
when-
dehydrated
better, but
gach?
not. No.
That's my emergency ration is dehydrated gach. Take it or leave it.
True.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
when you're starving, you'll eat anything, right? Like, look at what goes in an MRE packet. There's a dude on YouTube, MRE Steve 1989 or something, who eats like 80-year-old MREs. Like, that's what his channel is. He eats
Wow.
them, and he shows you this is what you can eat. This is why you shouldn't eat this bit. That's clearly not a good seal. Don't eat this kind of thing, and that's like his shtick. And he's got millions of viewers. So, yeah, I mean. Future MREs from the Klingon Empire might even last a couple hundred years. Who knows?
People like
Probably.
a lot of cool stuff, man.
Yep.
It's good stuff. There's
Yeah,
a bit
so-
of bonding here between Rock Talk and Murph too, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
think
I
they're gonna
love
be a
every
good
scene
pair.
with Murph.
Yeah. And I like the connection that Doll begins to forge with Gwen here too. This is
Well, he's playing around with a good little mechleth, just flinging it around like a play sword, and
Backwards.
she's like,
backwards. He's playing with
And-
it backwards. It triggered me. I'm sorry.
and Gwen had to come over and be like, that's a warrior's weapon.
Right. You don't need to be wielding this. I do like that they started bonding a little bit, which is it's good character development. It's not
Yeah.
horrible.
I think it's clear that they had communicated and been maybe not friends, but at least friendly earlier on Tars Lamora,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
Right.
they imply it multiple times, but clearly the relationship of her being the diviner's child puts her in an awkward position. But she had tried to be friendly. She specifically takes actions to try and save Doll. So
Well, and
yeah.
then I'm not a child psychologist, but aren't younger adults, don't they tend to be more forgiving, at least faster than adults? She tried to maroon them, and then later in the day, it's like, yeah, we're cool. No big deal.
I think it might have been a little bit of tit for tat. She did try to maroon them, and then when she got stranded with them, and Doll was like, leave her behind. She's just going to slow us down. That was and I think she's a little bit more emotionally mature than Doll is, so she might be, and I'm reading way into this, is like, what's that
It's
that
what we do.
phrase about, killing the author or whatever like that, when you read too much into a story and the author's like, I never intended that, but it makes sense anyway.
I never heard that one.
Yeah, she's recognized that she tried to do a thing and now she's paying the consequences for it, which is probably something that the diviner has very much built into her. You did it wrong, now you have to deal with the consequences. Don't do it stupidly next time. It's a
She
harsh
does
learning,
seem to be mature. Yeah.
but it's a harsh learning for her. Doll, on the other hand, it was just being something or other. There's a word for that. He was being mean. And here they've kind of forgotten about that. They absorb the moment of the scene where they can look at the stars and they can just talk to each other on equal terms and find a footing with each other, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, me too.
yeah, there's definitely a feel there for like they're bonding, but they're more like getting over some tension and getting back to where they had been before, which is good. That's healthy. That's character growth for them both, for sure. And it shows that they're willing to work together when they start looking at the stars, and Dal is very aware that Gwyn loves stars. So he starts pointing things out to her, and that's what they've done before in other scenes.
Yeah,
But
there's
this
lots of
time
good
they realize
constipations up there.
You're right.
Which is weird.
Constellation. Constipation is what
It's
we're
a
gonna
weird
have.
moment for a linguist to goof on,
cat boots.
but adorable nonetheless.
But yeah, so they find out, or they realize at that moment that they can navigate by the stars rather than trying to use just their tricorders, and the planet can't change the stars because the stars are not something you can terraform, which is fair.
Well, that's true. It still was moving the ship around for them, so it's not like the stars are going to help.
Yeah, it's still a challenge for them for sure.
But it
I
was
don't
really
even.
nice.
I don't even know how to do that. The whole reading stars and all that. I don't get it. How do you
Be a
look
Boy
at
Scout, they'll
stars?
teach you.
Aren't I a little old to be a Boy Scout?
You could be a scout leader or something.
Oh, okay. Yes, I would want to escalation to leadership right away.
Jay, it's literally like a week to 2 weeks of just reading the patterns of the stars in the sky. They rotate annually. So like in December, there's different constellations visible.
And you're talking about a linguist
summer.
messing up words.
I'm not a linguist. Juk-dak ach poet.
Sad thing is, I know what you
But
said.
yeah, no, you could look into it for like 2 weeks just on Wikipedia and be like, oh, okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
the biggest thing for something like this, though, is honestly, if you can pick 3 or 4 stars, right, that are at a certain declination from the horizon, you walk towards those, you will always be walking in the same direction because you're not going to change the angle of a star by walking towards it, right? So you can tell what
Okay.
direction to go by just pick a particular constellation or set of stars that are identifiable.
Well, and that's
Okay,
that's why
gotcha.
the North Star is so incredibly important, because the North Star, as the Earth orbits, you've seen those images of like star streams,
Yeah.
the time lapses and stuff like that. But the North
Yeah.
Star is in the middle of that circle. That's our orbiting pole. If you can point at the North Star, it might wobble a little bit, but as you go towards it in a day, it's only going in a tiny circle. Whereas this one star on the east over here is going to be on the west by the next morning. This guy right here will always be here, and that's why the North Star was so significant in spawning the development of seafaring navigation.
Okay.
And now that we're in the Beyond Astrogation podcast, let's go on to our next fun scene, which is
Thank you for
on,
keeping us on track, Renzo. You're doing God's work.
somebody has to.
Hey,
So
there's
we're
a
back on the
kid.
Rev 12.
There's a kid listening to us who's going to save lives someday because he's like, I heard on a podcast somewhere.
Well, if it's the kids' show, this is the one to learn on.
Right.
All right, so we're on Rev 12, which is the Diviner ship, and they are arriving at the planet in the Herogen system. Dreadnought is providing an update to the Diviner himself. Dreadnought continues to look fucking terrifying in the background, and the Diviner is like satisfied that they're going to beam down and seize the ship.
Dreadnought, man.
I think you said his name wrong. It's General Grievous.
Sometimes he looks like him.
Yeah. Well, and he's and one of the things that's so creepy about him is, one, he has mastered the art of alien walking. Like, just because he's built like a hominid, but he still does all the weird flips and tricks and animalistic, predatory, insect-like movements, which are creepy as heck. And he can also create blasters from his arms.
Right. He couldn't be. You could just say terror robot. That's fine. Just terror robot.
Dreadnought. Dread. He's
Right.
already well on his way to being Terrorbot.
Yeah.
Dreadnought.
All right. So after that scene, we cut back to the kids. They are continuing to wander. They are following the stars now, and they feel like they're making better progress. Even according to the indications from the tricorder that Zero is holding, they're getting closer. And that's when they see Dreadnought just standing there in their path.
And
In his
they-
humanoid form, standing nice and tall and terrifying.
And they think he's fake.
Yeah.
That
Whose
Mekhleth-
vision are you?
Such a good Mekhleth. Yeah,
That looks a little big for a Mekhleth. They always seem to be.
that's because Jankum
They're
tiny.
kids.
Oh well. Okay. Yeah. Well,
Also,
but that
we know
small-
that Worf had a custom-sized bat'leth. His size was different. He had gotten a custom-made one. Maybe the warrior to whom this Mekhleth belonged to was like a giant. Maybe he was like your height.
True. Yeah. That's a good point. You know how hard it is for me to swing a golf club? They're so freaking short.
Yeah.
Like I threw my back out.
Dude, it's
So
like
yeah, you're right.
it's like doing dishes. You have to like kneel over the little washing pan to do the dishes.
I've had to get down on my knees to do dishes because the back was just Renzo phrasing because
He's
my
like
back was just like
6'5".
I know. Why are sinks so short?
I don't know.
Can't they raise
Why
them
are
up?
you
to
so
some-
tall?
I don't. You're right. I don't know. It's my
All right, so Dreadnought turns around and points his arm, which becomes a blast, like a rifle of some kind at them again, and shoots the mechlith right out of Jenkinpog's hands, and Jenkinpog is now very satisfied that this is the real one. And Dreadnought instructs Gwen, like thanks her for bringing them to him, and then instructs her to get out of the way, and she straight up refuses. She goes in front, Christ maneuvers out, everything blocking, can't shoot them without shooting me, and Dreadnought decides to shoot out her brace from her leg so that she falls over. It's a pretty dick move, but it works. It doesn't actually harm her.
Yeah, dick move. But you're right. He's not. Well, he's not there to hurt her. He's just supposed to bring her back to her father.
Mm-hmm.
So I take it that there would be hell to pay if he actually injured her. But what was the indication? Well, but what was the indication that he had? Maybe I missed it. That going for that thing was what was holding her up.
Oh, there's like a red visory kind of like Terminator view where he scans over her and then it zooms in on her leg.
Gotcha.
Yep. And
I
then,
don't know how I missed that.
And then we get really, really lucky that the kudzu also likes to eat robot.
Yep. And the kids scatter, or at least Doll tells everyone to scatter, and then they all run into each other together because nobody scattered, or they all scattered in the same direction.
Yep.
Which is the kind of thing you only have happen in the D&D game, really.
The rest of you, break up.
You
look like a cadet review.
Perfect. So Gwen finds herself alone, unable to mentally grasp her broken now brace, and the kudzu is coming after her.
Well, now she can't move, and she's going to be an appetizer for this thing. And so the kudzu just doesn't differentiate between what it wants. It could be organic, non-organic, but you've got to think, how does life form like that, I guess, digest or process that wide range of stuff? Does it absorb sustenance, like some kind of
I think
energy?
Well, the way that it seems to work, and y'all can correct me or refine me here, but the way that it seems to work is that it grabs the life form and holds it in place until it dies, and then the life form naturally decomposes and it absorbs the nutrients that way. Otherwise, whenever it like successfully grabbed someone or something, you would probably see some kind of digestive process take over, and we don't see that. All we see is this kudzu that is entrapping people, and then eventually it rains acid, which probably facilitates the decomposition process. But otherwise, there aren't any natural predators here that help.
Right.
Here's the thing, though, for me, right? Like, there have been planet-sized life forms in sci-fi here and there, and some video games and such. In most cases, they're kind of like predatory. Like, they have to go seeking food. This thing seems very passive. It's just on this one planet. If it manages to get something to land on it, then it eats it too. But the amount of sustenance that it's going to derive from this group of like kids is nothing for a being of its size. So the majority of its sustenance must come from something else. Maybe it has chlorophyll, so it gets it from the sun. IDK. But it's just real big to really care about the scale of these little kids if it's just for sustenance.
Right.
What if this is a protoplanet and every planet goes through this phase before it has enough biomatter to actually start facilitating life-generating processes?
Who knows?
Are you talking
Nobody
about
knows.
Right?
I am speculating way out in the Twilight Zone. Don't mind me.
Yeah, you're off the reservation now. That's we got to reel you back in. It's a good one. It's an interesting idea.
No, it's an interesting concept, right? We haven't seen very many of these in Star Trek, so. Yeah, okay. Going back to the episode, the next scene that we see is the kids realizing that they left Gwen behind. Like, where's Gwen? she gave herself so that we could get away, is I think the line that's used. And then Dreadnought starts chasing them again, and they all huddle under the roots of a tree with Rock Talk like providing cover over them, like under the roots. And we get this fantastic moment straight out of Fellowship of the Ring with the Nazgul hunting the hobbits as they're leaving the Shire. And it's definitely an homage to it. It follows the same beats, the eyes through the branches thing, the whole thing. Definitely an homage, which I liked.
Perfect.
What did Cal think of it? Has he seen it yet?
No.
Okay.
Oh, that'll be a treat.
Cool. And yeah, the Dreadnought moves on just as the Nazgul do, and they regroup and start moving back towards the ship. And then we cut back to Gwen, who is now like crawling on her elbows and a knee to try and get the pieces of her like device, brace, sword, jewelry, decoration back together.
No, it's definitely a telling moment for her. She's wounded in a terrible place. She's been left behind. She's lost on a world that's trying to eat her. Her only tool is not summoning her, and she's not giving up. That says a lot.
Well, it does. Well, that's a hell of a lot of dedication, but her motivation is still to get to the ship to claim it for her father. So it's probably
I'm not sure if that's still her motivation at this point, because she did just save them from Dreadnought, right? And let the kids escape.
Yep.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, she's in this situation because she stood for them.
So here's how I read that, was that even though her goal was to get the ship, take the ship, that doesn't mean that she needs to let people die over it. Because when she tried to take the ship, it's not, she was just going to leave. But in this case, I want the ship, I'm going to take it, but you are going to try to kill these people, so I'm going to stop you because that's not what we're here for. That's how I took it.
That's fair. That's a fair interpretation. That definitely fits, right? But either way, Gwen manages to like realize that in this coming scene, maybe her allegiances are a bit more fluid than she'd thought. So she manages to get the pieces of her tech bangle to come back together. She puts it together into a sword, fights off the kudzu a little bit, keeps crawling back, and then we see her father, the diviner, beam down, and he's just staring at the protostar very intently, like chicken dinner kind of moment, like he wants it now. And then he realizes that Gwen is calling to him, and she's calling for help, like save my life kind of help.
Yeah.
As a parent, I can tell you that this, excuse me, this scene really bothered me because, to me, it's just me. There is nothing that I could be going for or after that would make me think twice if my child was in trouble and called for help. It would just be that immediate reaction to come do that. But here he is. He's got this Darth Vader, do I help my son or just stand by and follow orders kind of thing, or go after it? And he's conflicted. Do I save my child or do I get the thing? The
that just means you're not a sociopath, right? Like the diviner is not a normal parent. He is not a good person. A good person would definitely do exactly what you're saying. Not even a good person, like a decent, like a normal person would do so, right? This guy's fucked in the head to some degree or another, or he's got some motivation that he thinks is even more important than his own his last kid's life, the only other being of his species, the one who would be the mother of their race, right?
Yeah.
Not as important as getting the ship for him. So he's definitely messed up.
I think he's on the same list of shady parenting that Worf is on. So
he's worse. He's worse.
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. I'm saying the same list. Not yeah.
But yeah, so he turns, looks at her, like looks back at the ship, abandons the kid while she's getting wrapped up in the kudzu, pulling her down and everything. It's not a good look, and he just trudges towards the protostar.
It absolutely activates her next arc in this moment. She stood for them, got shot, got abandoned, struggled her ass all the way to this place, saw her father, pleaded for him, and he still chose something else. And that totally is going to play into her arc over the next 2 seasons.
Then we cut to a fun scene on the bridge with Hollow Janeway realizing that there's somebody at the aft loading bay, or at the loading bay, and we cut to her appearing there, and the door is like lowering slowly, and we get this fun fake out where, is it the diviner? Did he make it aboard? Is it the? Oh no, it's just Dal. Great. Okay, cool. And the kids follow in behind. I was definitely suspect on that scene while going into it. I was like, is it him? But
why wasn't it?
Tuvok is super excited that it was Doll. I can tell.
Yeah, Tuvix is barking at shadows at the moment.
Oh, great. Really? Shadows.
He's been watching Babylon 5.
So have I. 5th season. Yeah, it's a great fake out to see the diviner get one over on him, not understanding what this place is about.
Renzo, as a dog owner, my mother-in-law's dog goes absolutely batshit crazy at trash cans. If you've got one of those big ass trash cans and you're just trying to take it down to the curb, it just yapping. Why is that?
Because
the trash cans are where you throw all the food you want to eat.
I don't know. It could be anything, right? It could have been at some point if they were a rescue or something. Maybe when they were little, they were thrown into anything like that. No,
okay. No. Neither of those. Just loses his shit over trash cans. I don't get it.
Thankfully, Tuvix doesn't do that. Tuvix is only like outdoors, like things that really spook him are moving trucks, like big white moving trucks scare the shit out of him. He pulls against me. He wants to run back to home. He wants to be nowhere near them if they're driving past us or something. Doesn't like them. And it's just pure terror. Like, it's just that. So
this thing charged me when I was on a riding mower cutting grass. Like, are you kidding me? Dog's the size of a cat and tried to square up on my mower. Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah, every dog is different. They've all got a personality. So he must have a story.
Gotcha.
But yeah, okay, so the kids all pile into the loading bay. Janeway's there to greet them, and Janeway, as soon as she realizes that they've loaded in, she goes, "Where's Gwen?"
She's definitely summoning vibes from, was it Unimatrix Zero Part 2? Or was it Dark Frontier?
It's Dark Frontier.
Dark Frontier, where she's talking to Naomi, and she's talking about the 3 things that make a captain, and the third thing is you never abandon a member of your crew.
Right.
Yep. So we cut to this scene where the diviner fighting off the kudzu while the ship is taking off, and he can't get to it because he's surrounded and fighting off the kudzu himself. Protostar takes off, and then we see Dal being lowered on rope of some kind towards Gwen to save her. And he gets very close, but not quite close enough until she thinks to use her telepathic magic bangle to establish the connection between the two of them, and he pulls her up via the bangle and saves her life.
Yeah, like that, the magic bangle.
So, are we at the conclusion of this moment? Because I have something to say about this episode that I think is kind of cool.
Do it.
Have you ever heard of a chiasmus?
No.
A chiasmus, and I'm going to read this definition, is a rhetorical or literary figure in which words, grammatical constructions, or concepts are repeated in reverse order, in the same or a modified form. And so, there's a summary out there that talks about how Back to the Future is a chiasmus, because if you look at it, there's a first half of the movie that is then reflected backwards into the movie where Marty moves into his future, learning the lessons that he failed to learn the first half. This episode feels like that to me because it begins with everybody being abandoned, and the last person off the ship is Gwen and Murphs.
Mm-hmm.
And it then proceeds to a moment where Gwen is further abandoned by people that should be helping her, but she's not going to ask for help. And then we get that moment in the Klingon ship where they sort of bond. And then there's more moments like this, but the ones that stick out are then she actively is asking for help from someone who she trusts and loves, who abandons her, and she's rescued by the people that she was planning to abandon, and she's the last one aboard the ship instead of the last one off the ship. So there was a nice mirroring to the halves of this episode that I totally vibed with.
Yeah, that's a really cool observation. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're totally right. And that seems like a kind of narrative tool that you'd use in this show. That works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they managed to take off. And then we see that Dreadnought and the Diviner are left behind. The Diviner, furious, naturally. So,
Well, yeah, he was so close to his prize, but I don't know what happened. He went from running towards it to suddenly getting tied up in the sticker bush, and the kids getting there before him. So, yeah, I'd be pissed too.
yeah, no, I mean, it's reasonable.
It was definitely a nice moment of sort of unreliable third-person narrator where Janeway's like, somebody's coming, and we think it's the Diviner, but it's totally the heroes. Totally
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the next part, super awesome.
So the next
escape.
scene is the escape itself. They are at warp, leaving the Herosian system, and they are being followed by the Rev 12. Now, I don't want to say criticize, but I do want to note that the look of the warp tunnels in this scene are very reminiscent of Into Darkness, where the Vengeance was chasing the Enterprise in that one, and there's like a narrow tube, and it's like getting closer kind of thing.
Carol,
not
we're
very
at warp.
typical.
You can't catch us.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
not
I
very
can. When you
typical.
dance.
Honestly, they're definitely a lot more vibrant and dynamic than just, you know, your TNG or even your DS9 warp chases. You know, they used to say you have to drop out of warp to engage. It's 2381, 2382, whatever. Looks
Yeah.
like we've bypassed that need.
Even
Well,
that need wasn't very firm, because remember, again, in the Prometheus episode, I want to say it was the Kyushu or the Honshu. It was like a ship. It was a Nebula class ship that the three pieces of the Prometheus engaged in while at warp, firing phasers at it. So depending on
Yes,
distance, I think
yes.
that they can definitely engage with phasers at warp.
Yeah, you can do phasers at warp. You can't do torpedoes unless you're firing the aft torpedoes.
No, that's silly.
I'm sorry. You can because it happened in the motion picture. The Enterprise
Torpedoes are
was at warp
temporarily
when
warp
it.
capable.
Well, what?
Well, torpedoes can drift at
Yeah,
warp, right?
yeah,
They
you're
just
right.
can't accelerate at warp, right?
Right. Well, and then the other thing is that whatever happened to faster than warp? No left
That
or
was
right. I
one
got that
scene,
wrong.
one time in Voyager, and
yeah.
it was stupid then, and it's stupid now.
It is because you brought up Into Darkness. I mean, the Enterprise just doing all, swaying like a boat.
Star Trek is super inconsistent when it comes to warp stuff. I was just noting the
Yes.
fact that this definitely takes some cues from the Into Darkness.
Faster than
look
light,
of it.
no left or right. That's what it was.
Pretty.
Yeah, it looked really pretty.
Yeah.
And then we see the Rev 12 getting closer. It's like doing grasping bits towards it. Reminds me a little bit of the whale ship that does swallow Voyager, or of the sphere that swallows Voyager in Endgame, right?
Correct.
Or
Yeah.
that one non-corporeal ship that swallows Enterprise.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you talking about the Xindi aquatic ship? Or
No, there's
which
another one.
ones?
No, there were these non-corporeal life forms that like took over Trip and then started trying to take over the rest of the crew, and Archer ended up blowing them up.
I think I remember that one.
Yeah, so we end up at this moment where they're trying to like outrace the thing, but they can't. So they start talking about like what they can do, and they could use the protostar drive, and they do.
Baby Star!
Right.
Yeah, Rock Talk's Baby Star is pretty
Oh my
good.
gosh, it's so good.
Gauge the yeet drive.
But even here, like, the Diviner is trying to manipulate Gwen into giving up the ship. And Gwen has to make the hard choice of, like, you abandoned me on that planet, and so everything you say now is suspect. And you're not really trying to comfort me, get me home. You just want the ship, and you're going to toss me aside as soon as you get it. So
I'm so glad that... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, she does herself the favor of tossing herself aside and keeping the ship.
I love the protostar drive. That was awesome.
It definitely looked really sweet. I really liked it. I like the fact that Gwen was one that got to engage it too.
Yes.
I don't think she's going to be like the permanent captain of the ship. I don't think that's quite supposed to be her role, even if she is the most mature one there. But I like the fact that she was the one who got to tell her dad F you by engaging it the first time.
Yeah.
I just hope that we don't have that Saru / Burnham awkwardness of
who's the
Who's going
captain.
to command the ship? Who's going to be the captain? Yeah, let's not do that because
Well,
that's been done.
First of all, let's contrast those situations. Saru and Burnham are alien captain, first of his kind in Starfleet, to maybe reluctantly assume command of a ship, versus someone who is human, raised by Vulcans, who is basically like Starfleet royalty because she's the daughter of Sarek. She's the daughter of basically two planets who were founding members of the Federation, versus two kids who've been abused. Like the dichotomy there, it might even make more sense for Doll and Gwen to have the friction
butt heads
that they had than Burnham and Saru.
I can see that. Yeah,
I agree.
I get that.
I just hope that we don't like quickly settle into one or the other being captain. I would prefer there to be friction. I think that is more realistic.
There should kind of be a co-captaincy sort of rivalry of I'm older, more mature, but I don't know.
I would
just
what I would like to see in the middle of this arc, whatever it is, because first of all, they're not Starfleet. Nobody is actually going to be the captain. What I would like to see is an understanding between the two of them that like whoever's in the situation gives the commands. Like if you're in engineering and I'm on the bridge, I'll handle it, but like whoever knows the right answer does the thing. And they trust each other to do that. This really, to me, this reflects kind of what if Aang and Zuko were stuck on a ship together for 3 years? They have to figure it out. And obviously Gwen is kind of the Zuko here because she's the daughter of the bad guy who's trying to redeem herself. And I don't think Doll is anywhere close to any kind of Aang metaphor, but he is the seeming protagonist of these kids. Everybody else is a side character, that's fine, so these two are the mains. And Aang and Zuko were kind of the mains of Avatar The Last Airbender.
I kind of thought, I could be wrong, could have been the perfect time to do it, but I had a feeling that this arc with Gwen, this conflict of befriending these people or fulfilling her mission and just the kind of split loyalty thing would have played out a little longer.
I'm glad it didn't.
During the season. You think that needed to just go ahead and wrap that up?
Yeah, I think so, right? Like if these kids are now well outside of the Rev 12 sensor range and they are far enough away that they can't be tracked, then hopefully that gives us some time away from the Diviner's story, right? And now we've got just the kids, right? Which is great, but there's only one way they'll build themselves as a family is if the Diviner is now seen even by Gwen as being a baddie. So,
right. I guess what I meant was that what she did in this episode, instead of it happening in episode 5, maybe it was 7 or 8 or something like that, just to let that split loyalty breathe just a little more. But I kind of get what you're saying, that because they're ending this season, this is like the first part, and then it's 13 weeks before.
It's in January. I thought like January 6th or something is the next episode.
Yeah. So you're right. It probably would have been too difficult to continue a storyline like that unless you either A, wrap it up before your hiatus, or B, not have the hiatus, because as a family show, you still are dealing with are these young ones, these young fans going to remember where we were if we were in that kind of spot. It's a lot easier to recall that they engaged the protostar drive and just zip right out of there and they're gone.
I think that's the most important point for this, right? Like they're going to tell these smaller contained stories to make it so it's easier for the younger audience, and I think that's fine. In this case, we call this a cliffhanger, but it's really not. Like this is a good close to an episode arc, right?
No,
like
you're right.
They have escaped.
Right. I call it a cliffhanger because it's a mid-season finale, kinda, because of the way that they're airing it on Paramount Plus, but it ties up the story that started with them leaving the planet on the other side.
Yep.
Right. It's an ending story arc, but you're right. It's, if you're thinking cliffhanger, like Best of Both Worlds Part 1 or Empire Strikes Back. Sure, it's not to that level of cliffhanger, but it does leave you with, okay, what's going to happen next? Because even though
That's every episode of every
it's
show,
wrapped
though.
up, yeah, even though it's wrapped up here, it's the where do they go? How do they do it? What are we going to see next?
That's just not a cliffhanger, though, right? Like a cliffhanger is supposed to be like a thread, a plot line that must resolve in like the immediate next scene or something, right? So
Yes.
we get none of that.
I have an observation that I want to share.
Is it about Farina cells and how cool they look?
It's a technicality. It's an art technicality, but there's a goof.
What'd you
there
find?
is?
The audience can see it because it's in the camera picture that I've got captured here. But if you've got the cygnusx1.net page open to image 364, it's a full bridge scene of all of them. I don't know if you guys have found it yet.
Yep.
Don't give it away yet. Hold on, I'm hurrying.
All right.
I'm hurrying. You said it's
Image 364.
Image 364. Okay, well let me find.
It's almost the last one because there's 372 images total.
It's freaking ads. All right, so let me look here. Come on. All right, 364. Let me
Scroll all the way. Scroll all the way. And
I'm giving it all she's got,
Renzo,
Captain. I can only
you're
scroll
looking
so
at it.
fast.
Are you seeing it?
I'm looking at it. I don't see what's the issue yet.
You don't see
Okay,
the issue yet. That's
364.
okay. That's okay.
I'm opening. Let me look.
All right, so there's a bridge of
Yeah.
everybody, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Where are Jankum Pog's legs?
I can see one of them.
No, you can't because it's mirrored exactly on the other side. It's the post of the chair.
Oh, maybe he's sitting in the chair. He has short, stumpy legs.
Or he's sitting crisscross applesauce.
I mean, that's a nice in-character way to do it, but he's a little bit taller than that. If he's sitting crisscross applesauce on the bridge, he'd be the first.
That's how I sit on my bridge all the time.
You're holding out on us, Renzo. Everybody, Renzo has a starship. Go flock to him if you have earthly troubles.
It's like he's a kid sitting in a barber chair.
No.
I mean, I'm sitting right now crisscross applesauce, to be honest.
You could be right. Maybe his legs really are just short and stubby and sticking out, and he's not like actually
Right, they're sticking out. There's not enough to sit down.
That's the bottom of the chair. Should totally be there. Rock Talk's legs are there. Rock Talk has short, stubby legs too, even though Rock Talk
is
7
gigantic.
feet tall.
That's a good catch.
It's just a moment where I'm like, where are those legs? And yeah, so that was my only thought, was that the art may have missed something there.
Whoops.
Well, besides that, though, I want to say that for the first 5 episodes, the art quality on this show has been impeccable, super impressive. Big fan of like their LCARS displays. Their technology looks very legit. Overall, A+ for me.
Yeah, and I totally dig the fact that this story is being told outside of Star Trek, Starfleet norms. When we first started it, you mentioned that you felt like it was very Star Wars, like Clone Wars or Rebels or something like that. That feeling kind of hasn't gone away, but the teamwork that has been exemplified by the protagonists in this show
Tuvix agrees.
kind of defies a little bit of that Star Wars kind of feel. And so I'm happy this is happening, but also it's cool that stories are happening behind the scenes of the usual Federation experience. Like, we all knew that there are stories happening behind the scenes, and all the times the Starfleet ships showed up to try and either solve something or fix something or observe something or escape from something. You know, the Doctor in that one episode shows up in the middle of a really discriminatory time in that planet's history and helps to solve things. Voyager shows up in the middle of a fight between the Kazon and the Ocampa for water. These backstories are being told in this episode. Not like the backstories to those things, but this is a backstory to some other Federation interest, interaction.
Right. There could be a whole traditional, quote unquote, traditional Trek story happening somewhere else where there's a Starfleet crew on a ship and their mission is to find the protostar before, say, the Romulans get to it or something else. There can be an entire thing happening on the Federation side, which is something we would be more used to seeing. But instead of seeing that, we're seeing what's going on with where that mission is trying to go or what it's doing. And the fact that we're getting, and I'm not saying that that's what it's going to be, it's just that that's a good way to tell this story with this series, is that they could be on the receiving end of what we would typically call that main plot point, or that main thread of the season, of your capital ship, your star of the show kind of thing. At least to me, that's how I see it. It's kind of like with Lower Decks. With Lower Decks, you've got all the action happening on the bridge and everything else, but then you see, what is everyone else doing during that? Mm-hmm. That's kind of like with these guys.
Well, my lingering concern there for these guys is going to be, what happens when some component on the ship breaks or runs out of some kind of necessary fuel that cannot be easily replicated or replaced, right?
Yeah.
We know that there's some of that. Like, we know that warp nacelles the coils themselves need to be refit every few years. Voyager had to do it once while they were in the Delta themselves, right? That's probably not something that's been easily solved by the advances over the last couple decades. There's got to be some other things that run out of resources or break here or there. And I'm sure that Janeway hologram can walk them through most of it, but without any Starfleet crew, it's going to be a challenge, and I'm looking forward to those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
I think they're going to have a very short range of what can we fix if something breaks down or goes wrong, because you're right, no training. I don't even know how they're able to fly this thing, to be perfectly honest with you. I look at an LCARS display and I'm just like, what the hell, forget about it. And the fact that they're even able to get this thing moving and figure out where the weapons are, that's an amazing skill. Now, something breaks, you don't have a frame of reference as to what it is, how it was installed, how it was set up, et cetera, et cetera. So what are they going to do if something breaks or needs to be repaired? You're right. Janeway can walk you through it. I could sit here and walk you through replacing a motherboard on a computer. But the thing is that there's a lot of tactile, sensitive things involved with that. I could tell you to carefully remove the memory module from the motherboard, but if you've got big bare hands and you're not being tactile enough, you could damage something. You could break it, even if I tell you what to watch for.
You've explained it perfectly, Jay.
Yeah,
Totally get
it makes sense.
Yeah, you walking through that gave me sort of impression of like what's going to happen at the end of this season, and I think I know where Chakotay's cameo is going to be now. I think they're finally going to get in broadcast range of the Federation, and hologram Janeway is going to recommend they make a hail, and they do, and they hail by subspace, and they get to Starfleet Command, and there's somebody who's in charge of the Protostar project.
That could work. That sounds legit.
It's
Barclay.
It's Captain
No, it's
Chakotay.
Barclay.
Nah.
Barclay's been blackballed by Star Trek.
Yeah, you say Barclay. And for our adult audience, we invite you to look up what Dwight Schultz is up to now, but I doubt he's going to be getting invited to the franchise anytime soon.
I must be completely out of the loop because I've heard nothing.
That's okay. We'll talk about it later.
Fill me in.
So any conversations about like arc milestones here for these characters? I've got some stuff written down. What do you guys think? You got anything in mind about each of the characters, or do you want to go through one at a time?
Let's just go through one at a time real quick.
Right. So for Doll, I've written that, like, in a pinch, he's learned to set his fear aside and enjoy the moment, as well as doing the right thing for others. It's kind of a growth moment for him. He just wanted off the planet in the beginning. In the first episode, he wanted off, he wanted to leave, he tried to steal that roller car to get to zero gravity, and it totally failed. And then he found another moment, and in that moment, he ended up with these people, didn't really like it, and now he's recognizing that having friends, being able to do things with their specific skill sets is important, valuable, and life-saving. And he's learning how to be a team player instead of going it alone.
I think that's the big pickup for him, right? Learning how to work with a team instead of trying to be completely independent. That's the big gain. It's essentially his growing up story. It's a coming of age tale for him, right? It's his, I can't solve everything myself. Here's where I have to work with others. First, it was working with Rock Talk, then it was working with Jank and Pog, then it became working with Zero, and now it's working with Gwen and is part of this big mishmash of a team. So it's a good growth experience for him.
Yeah. Jay?
I I was amazed by the fact that he was able to adjust to and adapt to the whole teamwork thing, because the way that I took the mining planet that they escaped from was they don't want you interacting. There's no universal translator. They were very likely to pair you up with a species that had language that was just nowhere close where you could even glean anything being said. So you were used to working alone and very autonomously. You weren't in an environment where you had teamwork or working as a group. So with however much time he spent there, he was used to working like that. And for him to adjust as quickly as he did to working with these people after having come from an environment and a job that was the complete opposite of that, I think that shows a lot of growth maturity as well as to how quickly he was able to do that.
100%.
Well, that was part of the control mechanism, right? Like Tars Lamora prison, mining complex, whatever. You couldn't work with each other. You couldn't form a union. You couldn't work in a team because you couldn't talk.
Right.
Definitely intentional. So yeah.
Well, and look how fast they came together as a team once they could understand each other. That's totally what the Diviner was afraid of. That they would somehow overthrow whatever it was had been established, and by making those language barriers concrete, they were forced to do what they were told.
Yes.
Who's next?
Gwen. Having seen her father's true colors, she embraces her new circumstances, helping to save the crew and the ship.
I think her 180 on her dad is necessary for the storyline to continue. I think that it was well timed. I don't think drawing it out much more would have helped anymore, and it would have been too much like Avatar anyways had they done so. So having her realize that her father's a bastard sooner makes more sense in the situation, especially given the setup that they put it for. Ship, daughter, right? Like, that is the choice, and he chose poorly. So her realization makes sense for her character and in the setting.
Absolutely.
I think that the father, I was about to say father figure, he is a father, but has set the stage for that teenage rebellion kind of thing now, where that's going to be something that she will always remember, and that's something that's going to stick for a long time. And so what he did was seriously burn that bridge, and that's going to play in to this relationship. And I can see what's going to happen is that she's going to have that conflict come up. This guy is going to come back to her with the whole, I'm sorry, I was wrong, this and that, yada yada yada. He's got one chance coming his way. One. I still think that she's going to be just one more chance of, I don't want to say forgiving, maybe understanding, but then that's it. But I definitely see a lot of teenage rebellion that's going to happen now with this person, but she's gotten a taste of standing up for herself, which is going to help her have more agency when confronted by this father and trying to manipulate her.
That all makes sense. That's very well said. That all makes good sense. I just really enjoyed seeing her realization come as a result of actions, not from convincing from the hologram or convincing from the kids. Nothing. It's you saw what your dad did, right?
Yes.
So actions speak louder than words, and his actions there were monstrous.
And it totally, if we talk about how that reflects of her,
her abuse.
We said it before. When she got herself thrown off the ship, when she abandoned the ship, she broke her leg due to her own actions. And the abandonment that resulted was due to her own actions. And so these actions have been playing through. She's been trained very well to understand the consequences of her own actions. So now she's just flipped it on the person who taught her to do that. He made an action, and these are the consequences. You don't get to have that kind of respect or loyalty in your life when you just turn your back on the person that you said, I need you so much. You don't get that. Revoked.
Yeah.
The next person is Jenkum Pog. Still a complete mystery, aside from the fact that he kind of remembers being on a kid ship before ending up working in the mines. We don't get a lot of arc from him here. Anybody?
I know. I don't. For the very reason you said, we don't have a lot of arc on him yet. I don't know what to take of him.
He's also a character that grew some, though. Like, we knew from the very first episode he was just the engineer. He didn't care about people. He didn't care about escaping the mine. It was all a waste of time, etc., etc., etc. Like, he was definitely on the negative, like, kind of cynical side of things. And he takes even this mission on the Terra planet the same way. He took the spacesuit down with them, everything. So, I don't know. I feel like maybe the only kind of growth we're seeing from him is that he actually seemed excited for the idea of the Federation. That, hey, maybe out there is a place that actually values freedom. Freedom sounds nice. Instead of everything just being cynical and dark, which is where he started.
Yeah. On to Rock Talk. I wrote that she's admitted what her specific self-consciousness is, that people rebuke her for her appearance, and that she'll be figuring out how to accept herself on her own terms, and then she'll literally be unstoppable as if she's not already.
She'll be a cuddly rock monster.
Cuddly rock monster. Give me more of those. I want to make like a plushy Rock Talk.
Oh, they're definitely going to get made. Check Etsy.
Cover it in alligator scales.
I want one of those, but like with a Starfleet uniform on. I think it'd look great on her.
What era Starfleet uniform?
Whatever this era is. Whatever Janeway's wearing.
Oh, Janeway's wearing the Voyager era.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But have it be intentionally patchworked because it doesn't fit her so well?
Yeah, like it, or it was very custom tailored kind of thing. Like there's a crystal sticking out here or there just because they couldn't quite make the shape.
Yes. Jay, any thoughts on Rock Talk?
What I see from her is kind of very much that indication of an overweight child that has image issues and positivity issues and what's the other word I'm looking for? It basically is having trouble with that, not so much the self-image, but being viewed as I don't know, just no one wants to be the big kid in school, and if you're a girl, it's even worse. And that's what I see from her is she's starting to build that confidence. She is around people that see her for her and not laughing and pointing fingers, which is what's really going to help, because when you have that, when you're going through that, I was the biggest kid in school for like the entirety of school, every grade. And I can tell you that's you kind of feel a little self-conscious about that. You know, you're easily ahead or more taller than all the other kids. You stick out. And I remember there were a lot of times I just thought it would be nice to just maybe be normal, not stick out, not be this giant walking amongst the other kids. And I think that I can see some similarities there, where there's just this uncomfortableness of the size, the height, and everything else not really fitting in. And that's kind of where she gets that too. So I can see some similarities in that there. I think that where I see her arc going, that has been happening already, is that she's going to be able to come out of her shell and trust these other people that she's with.
I like that.
And be
Jay.
more confident with herself.
Thank you for sharing that, Jay. That's really introspective into an area of life that not a lot of people get a keen insight into. That's really good.
Yeah.
I thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to say also that Rock Talk seems to me like the original designs they had for Toph.
Yeah.
Giant. It was supposed to be like a giant dude who turned into a little girl, and now it's a giant girl who is very young, obviously in years, but still, the muscle of the group.
Right.
Definitely the muscle.
I kind of like that a lot. Murph, not a whole lot from Murph this episode, except for a couple squeaks, but he was absolutely afraid of Gwen in the beginning of that episode. He knew what she tried to do, and he took refuge in Rocktalk's arms. Zero, still quite a bit of a mystery, but we learn that even she can be duped by telepathic planet Kudzu.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Zero is a complex character, and they are one of the most interesting things about it too. It's the first time I think in any Star Trek that we've had a main character who is telepathic, and it is clear that Zero does not respect privacy or boundaries, right? Like, you're lying again. Nope, that's not why you did that. Like, there's none of that, like,
Right.
Betazoid respect for privacy here, right? So I think that's an interesting spin on things, and that's something that I hope we get more of in this season.
Now, for the audience who's sitting there squirming in your seats, maybe possibly going, what about Deanna Troi? What about Spock? What about Tuvok?
I was thinking the precise thing, but then I know
We're going from the angle that, like, Tuvok was a touch telepath. Spock
Yes.
also touch telepath, unless you count V'ger. And Deanna Troi, on multiple occasions, was defined as empathic only, could sense your
Yes.
feelings, despite a couple of early missteps where she sort of makes Riker think thoughts that she thinks, and stuff like
Sending
that.
messages kind of thing.
A few moments
Yes.
of telepathy, including Star Trek Nemesis, but she was not a full telepath. And even if she was, she demonstrated on countless occasions, most involving her mother, the impropriety of reaching into somebody else's thoughts without consent. To which Zero here very much is like, nope, I can tell. And so that's what we mean when we say full telepath on this show.
Well, and you made a very good point, is that it's the first season, you don't have your characters fleshed out quite. You grow into it, you figure out, okay, so this character Spock should not be smiling at leaves that make noise. He's suddenly going to be this cold, emotionless character. And with the telepathic thing, like you just said, the characters, they grow into it. It's tough to really go by that first few episodes or first season, because you don't really, like,
Yeah, they were
There's
kind
no
of
you gotta
figuring it
work
out.
into it. Yeah, you're figuring it out.
They were flying by the seat of their pants trying to develop Betazoids and Vulcans and all these other things. But with Zero, like, her character card was, she's a telepath. This was a part of her from the very beginning. This is
Right.
a core character custom that's going to follow through, and maybe one of her arcs will be learning when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate to use these abilities.
So to borrow this from another franchise, in Babylon 5, right, human telepaths have to go through extensive training via an organization called the Psi Corps that trains them never read anybody's mind, or there are criminal penalties for you, right?
Yeah.
Unless you get consent, it's a crime, right? And we'll hunt you down, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
Bester will come after you.
the only people who ignore that are psychops like Bester, played by Walter Koenig, who does a great job in the role. But yeah, so I think that there might be some sort of framework like that might get discussed, like, hey, Zero, it's not cool to read my thoughts without asking, dude, kind of thing. And I don't know. Either way, even if they don't have that, and we just have, like, a character that always knows when somebody's lying, I think that's an interesting twist that we just haven't had in Trek before.
Yeah, 100%. Hollow Janeway. I wrote that she shows the guts of the original Janeway in finding creative ways around her limitations. And I hope that someone has the brain to figure out how to expand her program's access. The problem with that kind of thinking, of course, then makes Janeway the uber hologram who could do everything, and that probably won't happen for a while.
Yeah, that'd be kind of dangerous anyways, right? We don't want a computer going sentient and taking over the ship and murdering the crew or anything. We've seen a lot of that in Trek recently.
There's been enough of that.
Do you think a hologram based on Janeway would really murder the crew?
Hey, Tuvix, you want to answer this question?
Thanks for
You
being a part of
walked.
Beyond Trek Podcast.
You walked head first into this. You couldn't stop yourself.
Oh, man. Oh man, I mean, it's made all the more better that you just have a dog named Tubix. Like, we've waited 11 months to make this joke, and we finally made it work. Holy
What
crap!
what are all the things that happen in the universe to culminate to this sequence of events happening?
We really should. We have to leave that for sure. That'll be
Oh
great.
God, yes, yeah, that's how you end the episode.
Everything just went right for that. Okay, so let's talk about the diviner then. The diviner is faced with losing Gwen, and of course he's pissed off about it. But he also showed a brief flicker of compassion when trying to decide between the ship and Gwen. He ultimately chose the ship, but is the diviner, yeah, just yes or no, brief before we go into it. Yes or no, Jay, is the diviner irredeemable?
No.
Renzo,
I go with yes.
the redeemer is irredeemable. Okay.
The diviner is irredeemable.
The
Yes.
diviner. Okay, Jay, why is he not irredeemable?
The reason I say that is for the very thing you said, that there was hesitation and genuine look like I don't want to say angst, but compassion. It was not an easy decision for him. You could tell, even when he made that final decision for the ship, he still, it's like he kind of squeezed his eyes a little bit. He hated that decision he made. It wasn't just a snap decision. He regrets it. He regretted it when it happened. That right there, those actions is what gives me that feeling of, is he irredeemable? No, because he went into it conflicted. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, ship, easy. It wasn't like that. That's why I gave my answer the way I did.
I appreciate the answer, and I want to reflect on that before I ask Renzo the same question. Like, for the target audience of this show, the 7 to 13 crowd,
Sure.
even though it's a family show, there are children watching this show, and these children are seeing this reflection, and I'm wondering if they're hoping that their parent would have made a different decision, and I'm wondering that the parents who were watching with them are as adamant as you are about, I would do anything for my kid. I don't need a freaking starship.
Right. Exactly.
Renzo.
So my argument is actually a bit grander. With regards to Gwen and being a father, maybe he's redeemable. But as a character, whether he can be considered good in any way, I think he's irredeemable because of his slavery of children at the Tarzomora prison camp. And I think that we should approach him the same way that Uncle Iroh approaches Azula. She's crazy and she needs to go down. He's crazy and he needs to go down. And this is
Okay.
coming from Uncle Iroh. So, yeah, I don't think that as a character, like in the grander sense, he's redeemable at all. Maybe he'll make some sort of like peace with his foibles as being a bad father, but that doesn't save him as being a bad person.
And that's a very good point. I didn't think of it that way. When Dag asked the question, I immediately went to his redemption as it has to do with Gwen.
Dag,
I wasn't even
right.
thinking about, you're right, but I wasn't thinking about the wider, grander thing. Because you're right, is he irredeemable there? Sure. But when it comes to just that family conflict between father and daughter, that's what guided my answer there, was because of that conflict he showed. He looked back at the ship, at her, back to the ship, at her. You could just see the anguish inside of him.
I can absolutely.
Where else did we see that
appreciate-
anguish of
that's the word.
looking at your child and back to something else and your
Right.
child again?
Right. I wanna tell Renzo, I really appreciate you expanding our minds into that realm of understanding, like, more cohesively, much like Janeway expanded Tuvix into two different people.
Too soon.
But
Oh, I'm gonna be
No,
laughing about this.
but
for the
no,
rest of
like
my life.
honestly, we should look at the diviner a lot of the same way you look at Ozai, right? He's a megalomaniacal villain character. We spend a lot of time seeing him, but we don't understand why he's doing anything. We know that he's powerful. We know that he's smart, but we don't know
Manipulative.
why we know he's a terrible father, but we don't know why for most of these things, right? And in the end, there's no redeeming Ozai, and I don't think there should be any redeeming of the Diviner, especially if he's still got the location kid mining ore on the asteroid. So yeah,
The next plot point is, okay, we know that he's this horrible person and he wanted the protostar. The next plot point is, what did he want it for?
That's the. I don't
What
think
was he going to do with one ship that had a protostar engine?
And what would it be that would make him want this ship? Yes, in that final decision, but was still conflicted about it. To me, it seemed like there was not something there that was so obvious that the decision to pick his daughter or the ship was easy.
Well,
to me, it seems like he could have gone either way on it. So whatever the value is here is something we could be completely missing. I don't think what I don't see here is a Thanos going after the Infinity Stones kind of thing.
I don't know. Thanos still sacrificed his kid.
Right. Yeah, he sacrificed his kid, felt horrible about it, but there was not the kind of, you knew there was going to be no hesitation there.
There was hesitation. He cried and everything, made it seem like the whole thing was a difficult choice for him, but he had to do it. Same thing here.
Well,
he seemed emotional about it, and he did it anyways.
Hold on, though.
A difficult choice is different from hesitating and not making that choice.
Thanos,
he was always going to make that choice, and then that's why it upset him.
Here's where the audience experience differs between Thanos and the Diviner. We knew what Thanos' objective was the whole time. We don't know what the Diviner's objective is. And when we find out what the Diviner's objective is for this ship, whether he needs a protostar to power something big, which is my leading suspicion, is he wants to steal this protostar power source to do something. We're going to look back on this moment where he's trying to decide whether he wants the protostar or Gwen. And we're going to think about it differently because we're going to know what his motivations are about that time.
So here's my theory for this, right? The protostar, he wants it for the drive. We know that the big deal about this drive is that it's fast, right? We know that when they were talking about getting to Federation space, Janeway does not make it sound like a 70-year trip. She makes it sound like it's a hop, skip, and a jump with it, right?
Sure.
So they can get there pretty quick. So it must be some fast drive system. Cool. We know that the Vaunikat are down to 2. And in the previous episode of The Diviner even talks about Gwen as being like the necessary part of their species, right? She is the thing that rebuilds their species. Maybe this whole thing is a revenge plot for him. Maybe he blames not the Federation, but maybe a Federation member race for being responsible for wiping out his people. And he thinks, and he's at that torn point where it's like rebuild or revenge, rebuild or revenge. Gwen being rebuild and revenge being the protostar. That's my theory for what's going on, but I don't actually know.
You know what I just thought of when you were saying that, Renzo? Yes, the ship has a drive system that makes it go very fast, but I'm thinking it's not the speed of a ship he's going after, but it's the power that it uses, that there is something that he's needing to power that needs some unbelievably powerful source. And when you say that, and you remind us that they're the only 2 left, my prediction is, and this is just my thought, that the reason he had the kind of conflict like he did, but had to make that choice, is because he's got something that's going to be able to repopulate his species, some kind of maybe cloning, some sort of facility, something that takes a large amount of power. And that's why we're going to see that the reason his choice was so conflicted is because, lo and behold, it was for something that was ultimately the good of the many outweighs the good of the few, or the one, and that one is your own child. But you're picking repopulating your entire species or letting it go ahead and just go extinct when you pass up on this power source. And
yeah,
he needs
it's
them
kind
both,
of like,
I think he needs them both.
He needs them both, but it's kind of like Man of Steel, Jor-El taking the codex of Krypton, putting it in Kal-El, shipping him off, is because you want to continue that species, and perhaps the only way he can do that continuation is he absolutely has to have the power source. If I don't have this, then we're extinct. There's only two of us as it is right now, and if I don't take this power source, we're gone.
Well, whatever repopulation thing is going to happen, it's almost certainly not going to be incestuous, right? Like, I don't think they're going to put that into a family show, to be honest.
Whoa.
So
No,
there's got to be
not-
something there.
Whoa.
But
I'm talking about like
yeah,
cloning,
okay.
not
right,
No,
but
not
even
not.
cloning doesn't bring you genetic variability, right? Like, a clone is a clone is a clone. You can't make two clones mate.
Maybe there's something
a
different
whole
he's got.
thing about the diviner that, again, we don't know his motivations. We don't know why
Right.
he wants the protostar, whether he wants the ship, the engine, or just the protostar energy source itself.
Or maybe he wants the Janeway hologram for the knowledge that she has. We really don't know anything.
Maybe, but we also don't know why he's injured to heck. Like, he needs a support suit. And so his motivations are drawn from trauma. They're drawn from, like, a deep-seated need for this resurgence of the population that he's from. He might even be pissed off at Janeway because without Janeway, the Borg would have had a different path through the Delta Quadrant. Maybe they decimated his whole world, and this is the only way he knows to bring it back. And the protostar has this really cool proto-matter matrix. If anybody's following me when I say proto-matter.
Yeah,
Yep.
protostar, protomatter, sure.
Yep.
Genesis, got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Use protomatter
So
in
maybe,
the Genesis matrix.
Maybe he just wants to create a new homeworld for Gwen.
What does a homeworld for one person, the last of their kind, get them, though?
That's
Real
why I think
estate
there's.
is super cheap when you don't have to go through a bank.
Real estate is super cheap when you have warp drive and just go to another planet.
Good point. Yeah. Okay, so maybe
All right,
not.
so do we have any, like, last thoughts for this? We are...
How long have we talked about a 24-minute cartoon?
It's only been 1 hour, 36 minutes, and 34 seconds.
Jesus. Okay.
We're fine.
I did have another thing I wanted to talk about, but we've already
I think for the
gone
audience,
3 times as long talking about it than the actual length of the episode.
Yeah, for the audience, Star Trek Prodigy is going on hiatus. Star Trek Discovery is now playing on Paramount Plus. You can catch all of those episodes there every Thursday. And then after Discovery concludes for season 4, the remaining half of the season, or the remaining like 3/4 of the season, because there's a 20-episode season, we're going to get 15 solid weeks of Prodigy, probably around February. So bear with us. Enjoy this time. And if you're listening to this right now, have a happy Thanksgiving.
Oh yes, get ready for some turkey.
Yay, calories.
And thank you, as always, for going boldly with Beyond Trek Podcast. Hey everybody, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our Patreon and Anchor supporters. Big thanks to Stephanie Baker, S. Tam, Anne Marie, Jim Cook, and Nora Hickson. We really appreciate your support. Thanks for being a part of Beyond Trek Podcast.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.